right, I will call the Capital Planning Committee meeting to order for Monday, June 27th, 2022 at 7:30 PM. All voting members are present. I do not expect Mr. Purple tonight, as I believe he's on a well-deserved vacation. With that being said, approval of meeting minutes from May 24th, 2022. So Karen circulated these some time ago. I don't know if anyone had any edits or comments for her. I'm seeing a lot of no shaking heads. Karen, I just had one item for you to maybe that we could probably clarify is in both the golf course items, I know it's referenced down below in the actual documents noted, but just to note, obviously we had received a lot of advanced material, hence like there's not a lot of discussion because the materials, I don't want to speak for the committee, but based on our vote spoke for themselves. So just note that the committee had the capital request forms in front of them, had no questions for Mr. Purple or something like that. And then that was all I wanted to add, just that it just seemed light in that section, but I think it was light on purpose because of what we had in advance.
Sounds good. I'll make that amendment and send them back.
Okay. All right. Is there any other comments or questions on the minutes? All right, seeing none, I will make a motion to approve the minutes with the one suggested edit.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Braccio,
Abstain.
Hark,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Joner,
Aye.
Wheeler,
Aye.
and Malinowski's aye. So that's 501. Next are requests for addition to capital plan originating from the ARPA process. I don't know if Mr. Miller was planning to attend tonight and or Kat from Trails. So what I'm going to do, just in case there's any sort of Zoom access issues that I'm not aware of at this point, because we have no attendees, I'm just going to pass over this item for the moment, just in case they try to access us later in the meeting, and we'll come back to it. Please, no one let me forget it, because that is one of the main agenda items for tonight, but I just want to not go too quickly and have them miss that piece. Next item is chairs, members updates. So I will start with the NERI Building Committee update. The committee met for the first time in a while last week. It was arguably probably going to be the quickest meeting we'll ever have on that committee, but it was mainly administrative to get aligned for later this summer. The superintendent has been in contact with MSBA. We will be starting our eligibility period process officially on August 1st. So the committee is planning to meet again in August to chart our next steps based on the directives of MSBA. One of the main things there that we are aware of that will come up is just the need for some meetings with the select board to get the appropriate legal paperwork in place. Given where we're at, especially in the process, some towns take up to 270 days to complete that. And we expect to be done in a month or so from starting that process. It's mainly a few items that just need to be buttoned up. So overall in great shape and moving forward. Any questions on that? All right. Joe Shopsy, South Union Subcommittee update.
Still waiting for the committee to have another meeting.
All right. I did see your charge was extended though, beyond 6:30.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I got the letter for reapproval. So
Okay. And then the last thing I'll just mention is we're obviously 6 members sitting here. And I think some of the best recruitment comes from individuals that know what's going on and what the committee is up to. And obviously, the workload that we have ahead of us this year in particular. So we'll just ask for everyone to continue to spread the word that we have at least one opening. And I know that we will have to have at least one more, unless Lisa and I resolve the fact that we're both on NERI moving forward, because that will be once our CIPC bylaw goes into effect. No member of capital you can't have more than one member of another committee on capital at any one time. So we'll have to monitor that, given that some others are on multiple committees as well. So just spread the word if you can. And for anyone that's watching the replay, feel free to apply to the select board. Okay. With that being said, I'm going to keep going into the rest of the agenda, and we'll loop back to item 3 when I either see if the 2 representatives join or we'll just discuss them because they have submitted a lot of paperwork at the end. So with that being said, discussion of FY23 capital planning process, including setting of deadlines for submissions for fall town meeting and annual town meeting. So just in case everyone is not aware, there is a special town meeting that has already been scheduled for the fall. Lisa, it is Thursday, October 13th. Is that correct?
I believe so, Jason. Did you see Kat just sent a note as well?
I did not.
She tried entering the meeting, but each time it states that the select board meeting will start at 6:30 and 6:28. That's tomorrow. I guess the wrong link is linked to it.
Yeah, I can't control the town's website.
Yeah.
So what I can do is, let me do this. Let me get through, Lisa, if you don't mind, just reply
Sorry.
to her, say, we'll send a link.
Okay.
Momentarily.
Okay. And Kevin Miller just texted me as well. I'll reply both.
Yeah, I'm looking at my phone now. See, instincts are usually right with these things, right? So Lisa, do you have access to the link, Lisa?
I can forward my link.
That won't work because it'll log you in.
Okay. No,
Let's do this.
sorry.
No, it's important. We say we're going to make every effort for people to be able to join. So hang on. I'm just going to pause for a second and just grab the link instead of belaboring this.
Lisa, if you click the arrow next to participants and click invite and copy the invite link, you can send it that way.
Okay, I didn't know that you could do that. Okay, let me choose your email to send invitations. Okay, hold on. Let me do it right now. Okay, I just sent it.
You sent it to both Kat
Yes.
and Kevin?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So while we give them a few minutes to join, let's continue item 5, discussion of FY23 capital planning process. So my plan here was to replicate what we did last year, subject to any feedback that we discuss here now. As you recall, in the middle of the summer, we drafted a very long contemporaneous memo to each of the department heads. I will likely also include the chairs of boards and committees on this email too, given that some are starting to manage capital projects that don't always have department heads directly responsible. Maybe they're involved kind of off to the side. Really basically doing a capital call, basically summarizing what we have in the plan for this year, asking them to adjust forward or backwards what's in there, but also asking for new items, and also requiring that they each individually submit the capital forms that we maintained the rigor around last year, regardless of the potential funding source, for items that they will be anticipating in the fall of 2020, the fall of 2022, spring of 2023, and anything during FY '24. So extending it 1 year. So we basically have a detailed look at the next 2 years, basically starting to see quotes and project details, not just like a number on a piece of paper, but also still seeing out another 8 years for what, where we're going to, bunch up in terms of capital needs and need to start to focus on spreading items out. With there being a fall town meeting, while I'm not aware of any yet, I would be naive to think that there aren't going to be some capital items that are at least considered depending upon the select board's continued deliberations of ARPA and where that all falls out as well. So what I was going to suggest is that during the month of July, that the departments identify all items, regardless of whether it's for the fall or the spring, their capital items, and submit the required paperwork along that. And no later than the middle of August, so I'll pick August 15th, that they update their recommendations for the full 10-year capital plan for their department. Because I think one of the things we want to be in a position to do is to accelerate or decelerate items. And I thought about a potential option of having them submit sooner for the fall town meeting. But I think we need to look at this kind of all encompassing with this year. And I get, it may cross fiscal years in terms of funding, but that was kind of my thought process. I didn't receive any negative feedback last year from the department heads in terms of our timeline. I know we had a lot of discussion of it's the middle of the summer, et cetera, but where we're giving 4 weeks for completion of the initial ask and 6 weeks for the full ask. That's what my plan was, so that we could start our deliberations come late summer, early fall.
Jason?
Yeah.
I've sent the link twice and they're not receiving it. I don't know why it's not working when I do it.
All right.
So
Why don't you all react to the capital plan thing? And I'm going to send a link directly from.
sorry. Yeah, I don't know why. When I did the invite, it,
I have a way of doing it pretty easily here. So
okay.
let's just anyone reactions to that sort of timeline process. And Brian, I really would welcome yours as a department head and someone that discusses this with a lot of rigor with your peers as well. I can hear you. You're faint, but I can hear you.
I'll put it closer to my face on my phone. So, no, I just wanted to respond and say I think it went well last year, and if you're giving that timeline, I think it recognizes the summer. It is a little slow. It's a little slower in response time in the summer because of the nature of the summer. But I think that fits good. And like I said, I heard good feedback last year, so I think I'm endorsing your plan, definitely.
Are there any other comments or suggestions?
Don't think so.
All right, I have sent a link off, so sounds like we're on the same page for the FY23 capital planning process. So I will get those emails out and we'll see what comes back in. I'll obviously stress, hopefully that some people can respond sooner than the end of the month, but I think, in fairness to some departments, they have 10 to 12 capital items a year and some have 1 every 3 years. So just want to be fair in the entire process. All right. I see Mr. Miller has been able to join us. So I'm going to go back to 3A on our agenda, which was request for addition to capital plan originating from the ARPA process, historic district signage. So I'm going to bring him over. Good evening, Kevin. You're on mute.
Hey, Capital Planning, and hi, Jason, and thanks for sticking with me. That was a bit of an adventure.
Yeah,
The link was taking me to the select board meeting for tomorrow. So that was the hang up. Anyway, I'm happy to be here.
awesome. Thanks for joining us. So Kevin, just to level the playing field, make sure everyone knows where we're at, especially for those that have not been watching capital planning. As you're obviously aware, the recommendation around your project specifically went to the select board. And because it wasn't on the capital plan, you and I have been discussing what it takes to get something on the capital plan. And, I thank you for the time that you've spent, asking what I would call the right questions and asking for help where needed and really collaborating through the process and sticking with us, because we're trying to obviously make sure that every request gets the same level of attention and level of detail, regardless of amount, source, et cetera, which is obviously what we're trying to achieve with the discussion tonight. So the committee has the form that you input to the town website, which is our standard form, the attached quotes. I know after you submitted it, you had a little bit of I'll call it a hiccup with the vendor changing their pricing, which I think we're all used to in our day-to-day lives. And you have subsequently followed up with an email today with a few other vendor quotes, which I think originated from our discussion of, general procurement, rules in Massachusetts and, best practices overall. So I would like to give you, before I open up to the committee to ask any questions about anything that they saw on the written deliverables that you sent, I always like to give you, as kind of the proponent, just a chance to speak to anything that you would like to share before we kind of, ask some questions.
Thanks, Jason. And thanks, Capital Planning Committee. There's a lot to look at, and I apologize that, this Excel spreadsheet came to you, this afternoon. I mean, I would have loved to have had it to you much sooner. As Jason said, when the select board voted to send it along to you, it occasioned us to go back to our original bidder, which was a local bidder in Marlborough, which we were very happy about. And, we discovered that they'd raised their prices very significantly since we acquired the bid in March, so much so that it really threw us into a bit of a sort of a backpedaling mode to figure out how best to come in with a bid that would, approximate what we originally asked for. And so Annie Pfaff, who's been doing the heavy lifting on this with regard to procuring bids and quotes, went back and quickly got the one that you saw from International Bronze. And, that was in the ballpark of the original quote. And we did go back and try to sharpen our pencils a little bit and figure out how we could make it more economical. And that had to do with eliminating one of the signs, and I can go into the details of what that is if you're interested, but one of the entry point signs, which we felt was expendable, and to do some sort of adjustments on what we felt installation would cost and a contingency. And one of the challenges with that particular bid was that the poles that 6 of the signs, or 7 actually, of the signs need to be mounted on aren't sold by that particular vendor. And, they were suggesting that we buy, fence posts from Home Depot, believe it or not, and paint them. An idea which didn't go over very well with the Historical Commission when I brought it up at our meeting later that week. So Jason had recommended, because I said, listen, I'm new to this. I'm trying to get this down as close to the bone as possible and be, economical for the town. But I had very little experience making capital expenditures for a municipality. And so Jason was very kind with his time. And suggested that we, go and try to look at other bids. And I did, Jason, at your suggestion of have Annie reach out to Karen Galligan and John Perrin about a state vendor list. Unfortunately, that didn't really yield much results. And I think it was because the kind of signage that we're looking at here, these bronze mark, is a very sort of particular item, and it's different from, for instance, what the DPW is normally accustomed to putting up. But Annie subsequently did have luck with a list compiled by the National Park Service, and they're actually the people that, of course, administer the National Register program. And so that's what you see in that Excel spreadsheet that I sent this afternoon are actually 4 additional bids that she was able to procure. And, even that, of course, is a challenge because, as I mentioned in the covering email, different suppliers manufacture in different ways. Some of the signs are sort of post-mounted, some of their sort of cap post products. One vendor sells as a package the post, the cap that's necessary, and the sign, and that's how they price it. Several of the other vendors sort of piece out the various parts. But I think what we came in and Annie's preferred vendor based on price, the look of the product that they offer, and the customer service was actually the Franklin Bronze. That's a company out of Pennsylvania. And their bottom line for what we felt we need came to $25,801, and our original proposal was $26,532. So we were quite pleased with that number, and it must be said that what that does not include right now is installation, which will cost us something. We would hope maybe to get some help from DPW on that. And it doesn't include a contingency that I tried to bake in to the last proposal that you saw from us, because I'm, given the inflationary pressures that we're under, I was doing my best to try to figure out, give us a little bit of room to play with there. So, that's where we're at. The signage, I hope you're able to follow. What it involves is there are 6 major entry points to the new Southborough Center Historic District. And that would be coming west on Main Street from roughly the railroad tracks moving west, coming east on Main from, where is it, about 54 Main Street, which is down around Fay. So coming that way, coming south on Marlborough Road, from just about opposite St. Mark's, it would just be where the St. Mark's Triangle stuff and where that road is being relocated, like the sign would be there. There would be a 4th sign coming up Corderville Road from just before the rural cemetery, because the rural cemetery is in the district. Then the other 2 entry points are about a 1/4 of a mile down Middle Road. So coming north on Middle Road, and also coming north for about almost a 1/3 of a mile on Ladisquama Road. So those are the 6 major entry points. And the proposal, we had originally had a sign proposed for also School Street, because that's an entry point to the district. However, since there are no contributing properties actually on School Street, we felt that was an easy one to take out for financial reasons, to try to keep the bid down. The other 3 signs that are proposed, one would go with the rural cemetery on a post. And I would note that not the rural cemetery, the old burial ground. I misspoke. And it's funny that I would say it that way, because currently there is no marker whatsoever at the rural cemetery. And we, kind of feel that's a central contributing property in the new district, and it would be appropriate to mark it. The other 2, one would go on a townhouse, one would go on the library. Again, central, contributing properties in the district that, of course, right now the town has spent or is about to spend a great deal of money on facade restoration and improvements both to the library and the townhouse. And so we felt it was a real way to sort of honor that work and to mark it and to say, these are really important buildings to the town and centrally located. and kind of the cherry on the sundae, corresponding to those restoration efforts. The other thing that I would say that we're really excited about, of course, is that the National Register does not mandate the marking of anybody's historic district. But of course, if you don't mark it, it basically doesn't exist, except on the nifty little sheet of paper I have from the National Register people, signed by Bill Galvin and the head of the MHC. And that's all we got until, there's no there until we mark it. And we hope at the Historical Commission that this is the first of, possibly several Southborough historic districts. And, the town certainly deserves it. The history's there, but it takes a long time to get it marked. And it takes a long time to get it recognized. And the efforts toward this, of course, predate my tenure on the Historical Commission by a long time. So there are a lot of people before me responsible for making this possible. But we feel like to mark this, would create some momentum. And also, by the way, we felt pretty strongly that in the run-up to the tercentenary celebrations the town is trying to organize, that this is a beautiful way to sort of gain some momentum there by saying, Southborough matters and the history matters. And we have this wonderful downtown district that we'd like to mark and let everybody know about as they pass through and possibly stop and spend some money at our local businesses. So that's the pitch. Basically 6 signs coming in on the chief entry points, 3 on the primary historical assets in the heart of downtown. The 6 entry point signs, 24 by 30, that's a fairly large sign, so it'll be visible as you drive. The 3 that would go, 2 on the buildings, the townhouse and the library, are smaller, as is the sign that would go at the rural, at the old burial ground, and that would be post-mounted as well.
No, that's great introduction, and appreciate both yours and Annie's work to bring us a very comprehensive proposal, for vetting. The one question, Kevin, I'm not going to ask any detailed questions now, but just maybe to frame and help the rest of the committee before I see what they have for questions is, in an ideal world, what is the number you are looking for capital planning to support, to put on the capital plan for this to achieve your objectives now that you've done this additional vetting in terms of vendors and all of that?
Well, I think, we're just at a hair under 26,000. And again, the original proposal was 26,532, but I would be, very open to what your recommendation would be with regard to the 2 things that these bids, the Excel spreadsheet bids, don't include, which is the contingency and what that should be, because I really have no idea, and whether or not we should budget for installation, or whether it's reasonable to expect our friends at the DPW to help us out on that. I was told, for instance, when a plaque went up on the South Union School, for instance, that cost $100 to install. So, I have to say, when I was doing that form, your online form for the committee, I was guessing, based on that, what does it cost to dig a hole in the ground and pour some cement and stick the post in? And I said to the commission last week that I'll go out there with a post hole digger myself and dig the holes. I mean, I want to get it done, but if I'm allowed to do that, I'm serious, I'll dig the hole. But, whatever you would recommend, I would tack that on to, maybe the 28 or 25, 801. What I asked Annie to do, by the way, and she was really great about this, and I wish she were available to do the talking because she's the one that deserves the credit, is if you're looking at that Excel spreadsheet, on the left-hand side was the full complement of the 6 entry point signs and the 3 smaller signs. On the right-hand column, I had to run the numbers with just the 6 entry point signs because I was worried about, the inflation and could we get the number right? Because I didn't want to ask for one thing to ARPA get it this far down the road and then come back with some ridiculous, oh, now I need this much kind of thing. But as it turns out, as you could see from, you know, the number she was able to come back with, that we're within, you know, $500, $700 of the original, on the low end of the original bid, but again, without contingency and installation. So I defer to you, the
Okay.
fire committee's superior expertise on that point.
All right, so we should deliberate on that committee once you get your questions answered. So I'll open it up to questions. Go ahead, Lisa.
Thanks. Thanks, Kevin, for coming. It's nice to see you. A couple quick points is I appreciate the avenues that you guys pursued, you know, to try to find funding for this. I think it's always great, and it shows the initiative that Historical has for this. My only real question is, I know you mentioned School Street, and granted, there's no houses maybe within that district now. Can I just ask you if, say, 50 years or 100 years from now, would there be homes that you think may qualify that it may be worth putting up the 7th sign and making the investment now for the future?
You're on mute, Kevin.
Yeah, that's a good question, Lisa. And, you know, certainly I was trying on behalf of the town to be as cheap as I could. But if we could get the 7th sign, yeah, I think it's a good long-term investment. These signs, by the way, are rated to last 500 years or more. So that's nice. This is not a disposable product. And, you know, in fact, if you look at the district and the boundaries and the potential additions, you know, it would be subject to, you know, a fairly long review, first by the State Historic Commission and then by the National Register people. But I could well imagine an expansion of this district going forward. That would, for instance, warrant the moving of the signs on Lattisquama and Middle Road further south in both cases. And that, you know, might well warrant so that kind of readjustment. Fortunately, again, these signs are built to last. So it, you know, I'm certainly not going to turn down the chance to put one on School. Like I said, I was trying to be cheap because I was getting worried about it. But yeah, it would, I think as a long-term expenditure, it would make sense. I will admit, I also took the view that down the road it could be added and blend in, you know, nicely with what we already had.
Okay, thank you. Historically, Kevin, if you don't do it, you know, I've seen it happen a lot of times. If you don't do it when it's on everybody's mind, I would hate to down the road not get it done, especially when ultimately you're talking, what, a few $3,000, I think it is.
Yeah, another 20, yeah, sorry, 3,000 with the posts.
Yeah, so again, I'm very supportive of this. I would like to see the 7th sign go in as well and just make it a complete project. And again, Kevin, please share my thanks with everyone on the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
So Karen next.
Yeah, Kevin, thank you for this presentation and summary. I think this question might be more for Jason. So can you remind me, so the select board approved the ARPA funding, and then and this is one of the capital projects within the ARPA funding that we're approving?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way to think about it is any item that's an asset of the town, 500-year asset we're hearing, that's great collectively as one package greater than $10,000 is supposed to be on the capital plan if we follow the town's capital planning policy. We are obviously dealing with a very unique, probably once in all of our lifetime situation where ARPA funding came available. And because of the timeline that ARPA had to react, and these committees like Kevin's commission, and I'm sure we're gonna hear the same thing from Kat next on trails, they didn't have the time to come to us. So ideally it would have been the other way around, right? It was always on the capital plan and it just came up during this year, but obviously ARPA is what generated some of these requests.
Okay, yeah, okay, thank you. And I do agree with Lisa about doing the project, you know, 100% at this time. I think it's appropriate, and it's a lot easier than having to come back for a piece of it down the road. Thank you.
Jeff?
So thank you, Kevin. Yeah, Karen pretty much had the same question, or I had the same question as Karen, I should say, in terms of the ARPA piece. So I think I get that now, but I mean, I think I'm also in favor of the 7th, and I think we could even, be able to pay for that just if we could do the installation on our own. If we have DPW or, folks volunteer their time, it's gonna be the same cost anyway. So that's my 2 cents. So that's all.
Okay, Joe?
In thinking about School Street, I'm thinking we might want to see if St. Mark's would like to contribute in a pilot way toward this particular sign, because they are a lot of that street, and owns a couple of houses, at least 1 or 2 houses on that street as well, where they house some of their faculty. And so for them as an entrance, sort of an entrance point to the school, it may be an opportunity for them to contribute in a way that they hadn't normally contributed in the past. Not that they will or they won't. I am generally in favor of doing this all at once, getting this done. If we're going to do it, just do it. I was on ARPA, and I thought it was a very reasonable request from ARPA from the historical. So I am in favor, but I'd also appreciate maybe spreading it around, seeing if St. Mark's would help contribute at least to the sign, and maybe we'll put it in. That'd be great. Thanks.
So we have a select board member here. Lisa, I think you have the message on that one, but I don't think we should discuss that piece any further. But I guess, Kevin, one question that hasn't, or question, then a comment that hasn't been made yet, is if ARPA didn't exist, would your commission likely have been seeking funding through a town meeting vote for this, given the recent designation anyways?
I think so. Of course, the approval of the district occurred actually on December 29th, 2021. So it was right in the kind of wheelhouse the ARPA was getting going. We got the notification around the first of the year, and, the official documentation, and then ARPA was right there. And it just seemed like, well, here it is. How we would have gotten the money without ARPA, yeah, I guess it would have gone to town meeting, or I would have been asking questions of you, like, how do I get the money? Because I'm still learning in all this, and so yeah, I mean, we would have sought, clearly would have sought it elsewhere. This seemed like, to us, when the call went out from the ARPA folks, we just thought, well, yeah, we need something. We just found out, and here it is. And, it seems really to sort of set up, I know that so many of the requests for funds are very large ticket items. And this seemed like one, that for a fairly relatively small amount of money would really show something to people in town. Like we got, what I mean? It's like a really immediate sort of thing that you get, and everybody sees it when they drive past. But yeah, surely we would have sought money elsewhere.
That date that you mentioned is very important, at least in my voting perspective. Mm-hmm. This is not something that you went, oh, aha, there's this magical $3 million bucket. You likely would have been coming to us anyways, albeit maybe a different sort of pitch, because you either have been looking for CPA and how to deal with CPA, or you'd have been looking for general fund or something else, or even going down the pilot road and saying the select board, hey, this is a capital item that you can now use kind of in your toolbox sort of thing when you go for these negotiations. So to me, as one vote, that's really important, that this isn't something that you just woke up one day and thought of. Like, the timing that this is all happening makes sense to me.
Right.
The other thing I would ask Lisa is, if I remember the ARPA presentation, basically a couple dollars left if you followed every one of their recommendations, which goes to Kevin's questions of us on contingency. And if I look at least the vote you all took on the senior center, is you voted to follow the capital plan with full acknowledgement that there may be extra funds needed depending on what happens there. And your board seem to support concepts not necessarily dollars, right? Versus, I think the request of us is capital. I think we need to separate them, right? Is one, is this a good item to be on the capital plan? Does it fall within our capital policy? And then two, what is the appropriate amount to put into the capital plan? So does everyone agree with that sort of, like, we're in new territory, but I know Kat's listening, and this is also going to come up on her item that follows. That's, I think, the ask of us tonight is A, should it go on the capital plan? And B, at what amount? And then it falls back to the select board if that number doesn't fall within the ARPA allocation for them to prioritize or have the conversation we're having about this additional sign. So we're aligned on kind of process.
Yep.
All right. So I'm going to try to summarize where I think we're at as a committee. I didn't hear anyone say they were not in favor of Lisa's recommendation to add the sign. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Everyone agrees with the addition of the sign that Kevin took out to try to manage his number. Okay, Kevin, we look at projects in complete whole. We don't look at them, we don't like pieces, because I think Lisa's comment was very well stated. Part two is DPW labor. What I would like to do is assume zero labor for now. In our motion, we can acknowledge that if for some reason this project is beyond the scope of work that they're able to do, we can revisit and add the labor in, and we will denote in our capital plan that this is for materials only. Is everyone okay with that approach?
Yep.
All right, and then part three is Kevin's question on contingency. While I firmly believe in contingencies, if we're only voting on materials for now, I think we should just vote on the materials and adjust the number that Kevin originally requested in the form to tie to the vendor that they plan to go with now that they've followed a procurement process with the addition of the sign. And I'm not going to try to do the math on the spot, Kevin. As much as I think some of us would try to, it's dangerous on live TV. So what I would do is frame a motion around supporting the additional sign and working offline with you to get that final number and have that number be what goes in the capital plan. That be consistent with what you were looking for tonight, Kevin?
That sounds great to me, Jason.
Okay.
That's perfect. And I can't thank you all enough for, endorsing the seventh sign and basically talking me out of my cheapness for the betterment of the town. So I really appreciate it. And I believe me, we will beat our vendor upside the head and keep them in line if we can all do it. Like I said, I'd give me a post hole digger and I'll get out there myself.
Well, I think we can help you there too. So if you need any help coordinating that piece and communicating that, you and I can work offline on the messaging just to make sure we're not leaving you with signs, but no installation.
All right, fair enough.
All right, so I'm going to move that the Capital Planning Committee support the Historic Commission's request for historic district signage and ask that the chairs of both committees work together to finalize the amount to acknowledge the discussion here tonight of the addition of the seventh sign, and also acknowledge that no contingency or labor is included in that amount. There a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Hang on. Public comment, Mr. Reed. Go ahead, Mr. Reed.
Good evening. So just one technical question first. With respect to the location of those signs, would all of those signs be installed on public property?
as I understand it, yes, because the public way, of course, extends onto all of our yards, several feet. And so, some of the signs would, I believe, be, nevertheless on town-owned land. But those that would be, for instance, next to somebody's yard, it's still within the right of way, public right of way that, any of those road signs would. And of course, I would say that I would certainly want to have conversations with any concerned sort of neighbors about the precise placement to try to get, make people as happy as possible. I've looked in a couple of cases at the precise place I think the signs would go, and to try to imagine that it wouldn't, for instance, no one wants a kind of eyesore like right in front of their yard, but it would be, adjacent to some trees or in some place where you wouldn't be looking at it out your front door, for instance. So I would certainly want to have them placed with some sensitivity.
Okay, yeah, so that was my thought, is just curious to know if that involves having to go through the zoning board or through any form of a zoning process, appreciating the mere fact that it involves the installation of a sign. The only other comment I wanted to make, and just curious to get this this commentary from any members of this committee, is just to speak specifically to the spirit of ARPA funds and what their intended, what that intended purpose is. If any member who is willing to speak to that could just go on record to explain, how that meets any of the guidelines or the stipulations of the use of the ARPA funds. Thank you.
So I'm going to address this, and Ms. Braccio, if you have anything you want to add, feel free. I think so. So to Mr. Reed's question, first and foremost, the select board holds all authority on how this money is spent. They can ignore everything that this committee says. They can ignore everything the ARPA committee says, but it has been a very public process to date. I think your question, though, is more around all the however many pages of guidelines that the federal government released on this. Because Southborough's share is only $3 million, my understanding is it all qualifies as revenue replacement, essentially. I think the term has been thrown around quite a bit, in which case the all of the other stipulations really don't apply. And it greatly broadened the ability of the town in terms of what the funds could be appropriated towards.
Very good. Thank you, Jason.
Is there anything to add?
No, I think that covers it, Jason, that this would have ended up on a capital plan anyway. So, yes.
Joe, you have something you want to add as a member of ARPA?
Yeah, the presentation that's given to the select board, in the funds, the way the funds may be used, the first point was to respond to public health emergency or its negative economic impacts, including assistance to households, small businesses, and nonprofits, or aid to impacted industries such as tourism, travel, and hospitality. I think that this easily fits in that purview.
All right. All right, so we have a motion that has been made. It's been seconded. We need to do a roll call vote. Braccio?
Aye.
Park?
Aye.
Palmer?
Aye.
Shoner?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye.
And Malinowski is aye. So that is unanimous. Kevin, thank you to you, Annie, and the commission for your time and dedication to this.
Thank you, Jason. I just want to thank all of you for your hospitality and your support, and especially to you, Jason, because your counsel was really critical to us getting to the point where we had numbers that I think we can all feel good about. So again, thank you so much on a hot, steamy night, and good night to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to move on to 3B, the Peninsula Trail Project. So I'm going to swap Kevin and Kat out. Give me a second.
Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
How's everyone?
Good, thank you. So Kat, I know you probably were hopefully listening to all of that discussion for Historic. Would welcome you and thank you also for the time and dedication that you've put into this project. And I know you and I have exchanged emails now for probably a couple of months leading up to this in terms of what's the right process to get it onto the capital plan. I'm sure you feel relieved now to know that all the documentation is in, and we're here tonight to discuss it. Obviously, your funding is quite significantly different than what we were just talking about with Kevin in historical, but nonetheless, we are happy to hear any openings that you want to make before we kind of dive into the details of what you submitted.
Great. So I know some of you are familiar with this project. Some of you are not as familiar. So I can give you the high level view and then leave some details out for questions. So I'm not taking the time to do all of that. But essentially, this Peninsula project is part of a commitment the Southborough made to complete the Burroughs Loop Trail back in 2012 and 2013 when the feasibility study was put and all the communities and organizations came together and said, let's build this trail. So now in 2022, we are in position to do that. So the Trails Committee has been working for years to get agreements in place and working with DCR, they needed to update a public access plan that just came through. MWRA just came through with their public access permit, the 8M permit. So that's getting signed hopefully tomorrow or in the next week or two, approved by the select board perhaps tomorrow. And so now we've been, a couple of years ago, we went after some CPA funding. That gave us some money to go after a Mass Trails grant. So the Mass Trails grant announcements are coming out tomorrow. So there's some funding there and some in-kind funding from DPW that's associated with that Trails grant. So this one piece, this trail is also linked to the Bay Circuit Trail, which is a regional trail, 233 miles. And the Burroughs Loop is around 33 miles. And then the Aqueduct Trail is also involved. So there's three significant regional trails involved in this one piece. So, so that's the high level, and there's a lot of little details associated with fencing and building a bridge and a boardwalk to ensure that there's safe crossing, and the fence is really for DCR and MWRA to ensure that some of the infrastructure that is used to manage the dam is protected. So trail users can go back there, and then there's some signage involved as well. So I'll stop there and let you guys ask some questions if you have some of those.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you. Good evening, Kat. Thanks for coming tonight. I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So on the application that you have, the amount requested is 359,000. So can we just kind of talk about that for a second? Because 47,000 has been allocated from CPA, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
So that would come out of that. Then the in-kind, we don't know what the Mass Trails grant could be. Can you tell me what was applied for? I mean, do you apply for a specific amount or just a specific segment of the trail?
We applied for the full amount, and I'm going to say, so I've been using it's $270,000 total, but that includes the 47 and it includes the 21. So we can put it around 200,000, which is what the Mass Trails grant would fund. But that does not include crosswalks, which was a phase 2 funding aspect, but that we've, so I'll stop there so I don't confuse, because there's a little bit more of that.
Okay, so roughly, if you get the Mass Trails grant and it's say $200,000, then it will cover what you're looking to do here. So then you'd actually be coming back and looking to do phase 2. Is that a fair statement?
So I'll start by saying we aren't coming to the town for any money except for ARPA
ARPA,
funds,
correct.
right? So we expect, like, so if the Mass Trails grant came through and CPA came through, well, CPA is there and
Yeah.
DPW did their in-kind support, then the only thing we would need to fund are the crosswalks, because then the project is fully funded, right?
Okay. So I guess, just so I'm clear, we're not actually approving an amount specifically tonight, Jason. We're just looking at, because again, we won't know until tomorrow what the funding may or may not be. We're looking at the project as a whole.
Well, I think we need to be looking as a whole, because anything that's grant funded should still be on the capital plan.
Right.
We've had this conversation, fire in particular,
Okay.
right? We, so we would, obviously, it's not going to get on the, it's not going to magically appear on the capital plan
Right.
between tonight and tomorrow. So, I think we could make an all-encompassing vote tonight if the committee is comfortable, or we could support concepts subject to, this further discussion of seeing where the grant comes out. But I think it has to be on the capital plan for the select board to take action, right? So we need to find a way to thread that needle, realizing that we're meeting on the 27th, and
Yeah.
obviously tomorrow is a bigger day, because I don't know if, there's differing views of if you get the grant or you don't get the grant, whether right, like, whether it would be on the capital plan, et cetera. Like, I don't, I think that's what this committee needs to discuss. So it should be the total number though.
Okay.
And then the capital plan breaks out by funding component, and that clearly can move over time as needed.
Okay.
So to answer your question, Lisa, you said, where did the number come from? This number is 194,546. So say that's the 200 I was rounding up, plus the 150 for a crosswalk, plus a 15,000. So that's the 359,546. Oh wait, what number did I put in there? Actually, did I put? Yeah, 359,550. So that's how the number came about.
Okay. So the 150,000 for the crosswalks is included in the 359 number. Okay. That was my next question.
Yeah.
Okay. So technically it's not really a phase 2 per se, but got it.
Yeah, it's all confusing.
Okay. I'm good. Thank you. I hope I didn't confuse anybody. Thank you.
Go ahead, Karen.
Hi, Kat. Good to see you. So my question is similar to Lisa's. So the 359 includes the crosswalk and everything, and everything, right? And it's all, and the intention is to do all of it at one time.
At one time, as much as you can, as far as, organizing vendors and stuff.
Yeah,
Yes. So one
Yeah.
project, but it may have to stagger. if
sure.
being little.
Yeah. And then, so the other question is, if you don't get the Mass Trails grant, where would the additional funding come from?
So we put forward a project for the ARPA funds as well, and it was an if-then. So if we get the Mass Trails grant, then can you spend ARPA money on the crosswalks? If we don't get if we do get the Mass Trails grant, no, let me start over. If we do get it, can you pay for the crosswalks? If we don't get it, can you pay for the project?
Okay, got it.
That makes sense?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to also clarify, we got 2 quotes from VHB for the crosswalks, and one quote was 150,000 for Central Street and Route 30. The other was 505,000. He said every time he went back, it got a little more expensive. So that number I'm using for the 359 is the lower of the 2. So we all know how those things may turn out. So even though I use that number, it may not be enough to cover the cost of what needs to be done at the intersection. But that's really not quite in our control yet.
Okay, and so then any overage would still be funded by ARPA?
No, we did not ask for that anywhere near it. So if the crosswalk cost comes at 505,000, we'll be back to the drawing board trying to find money from another source.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Hi, thank you, Kat. I'm not sure I understand where this is. I apologize for maybe the dumb question, but
That's okay.
so is it by the Fayetteville Park?
On Central Street, if
Yeah.
you go all the way down Central and that's a T-bone at Route 30.
Yeah.
The first terminus, that's going to be the western terminus, is straight ahead at that. So there's an intersection and a light. There's a little driveway you may never notice, but that is the entry. That's the starting point, or I'm calling it the starting point of the access road that DCR and MWA use to maintain some of the infrastructure of the Fayetteville Dam. So it's back there and it loops around and it comes out near the Stony. Are you familiar with the MWA facility on the other side? Just down the road from New York Ave, it comes out on this little road called Stony Brook.
Okay. Another question I have, I'm not sure if it's in the cost or it's been considered. What about lighting? Because it's in a area that's away from the main road, and half the year it gets dark out probably before 6 o'clock. So
We're not proposing lighting a trail. And you're not really allowed on the trails, as I understand it, after dark. And there's residents back there that the lighting would impact. So yeah, we have not proposed lighting for this trail.
okay. Okay,
Uh,
thank you.
Kat, you mentioned something 2012 or 2013 that we committed. Who in particular committed?
So I wasn't around then. I understand it was Recreation Department and Trails Committee at that time. So I believe it was during Ferguson. Dan Frank was on the Trails Committee and Dan Guilford also. Dan Guilford may have been the chair at the time.
It turns out I was on the committee at that point, the Trails Committee at that point. And so when this Burroughs Loop Trail came up, South Burroughs said, yeah, we'll do our part.
But it was basically a committee and a department head. It never, there was no sort of town meeting funding or anything like that.
No, there was no legal commitment here. It was a committee of people saying, yeah, we'll do our part.
But basically you're saying everyone, Kat, with that opening statement, basically saying everyone else did their end of the bargain and Southborough has not at this point in time.
Yeah, it's our turn. Yeah, right.
Okay.
It's not that we have not, but we've been waiting for the pieces to come together so we could do our part. Yeah.
Jason, can I ask Tony a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Seeing as he was on, Tony, do you know if the selectmen signed off on this as well? I wasn't on the board then, but I would assume there had to have been some type of recognition from them as well.
I have no recollection of that.
Okay, that's fine. That's something I can check into. I would assume they did.
Joe, I have a few more, but why don't you go?
I was just going to say, I think it was also a fairly important point when it came up in ARPA that this was basically would be one of the only ADA certified sections of the trail. And I went over and walked that road back in there and it's absolutely beautiful. And I think it'd be a great asset for the town.
And to clarify on that, only a segment of the trail will qualify as ADA because of the slope issues that can't be addressed. So about 0.4 miles will be ADA compliant. It's still a great trail.
Okay. So I want to try to see where we're at on, I think there's two projects here. That's just at least my hearing how this was like, just, and I think it's how you pitched it candidly, Kat, to ARPA, right? It's the Peninsula Trail project that was submitted to the state that we're all very hopeful that you get some really good news on tomorrow. And then there's a separate project that, because you're hopeful that we get a thumbs up, would be a nice way to complete the overall package that relates to crossings. And well, I understand what's trying to be achieved there. I am now struggling in my head with how that intersects with what the DPW is supposed to do in terms of prioritizing what I'll call road maintenance.
Yep.
In whether this falls in that bucket or not. I don't have an answer, and I don't think I should have an answer, but I think it's something that has to be discussed.
Right. And the only related DPW and priority list that I am aware of is the sidewalk on Central Street is on the list, and you guys know what the list is. I don't. But I spoke with Karen when we were submitting the grant, and I'd have to look at the support letter, but it's like project number 30 or priority number 13 or something like that for sidewalks. So it's on the list to extend Central Street sidewalk all the way to Route 30, which is one of the things that needed to happen. But you're correct as far as this was not on horizon for a redo or any kind of work on that intersection at all, other than the sidewalk.
So let's just say the funding was magically available. Who's going to oversee the project?
Well, that would not be me. So with the trails piece of it, we're hiring a separate vendor to help us do a project management of that. And I don't know, I don't know who would be in charge. I'm assuming DPW would be involved, but we haven't really gotten down far enough in the project to understand that piece. And I'm fairly certain that no one wants my opinion on that topic.
Well, in full fairness to you, your compensation of 0 per year does not necessarily make it such that you should be overseeing it's a 6-figure project, no matter how you.
Yeah. I'm Trails Committee Chair. I'm not involved in that type of project, so I wouldn't assume that we would have anything to do with it other than please make sure you have a crossing at the end of your project.
And is this project, I didn't see the project management in the budget. Is that in there somewhere? I missed it?
The project management for the Peninsula Trail, yes, it's under, well, it is listed as, it's in there, but I don't know if I couldn't send you an Excel. Oh, I did actually send you a little package, the attachment. So that would have had in the spreadsheet, it would have.
Is it in the quotes?
I don't think it's in the quotes. I'm just wondering if I sent you the
If you think it was in there, I think.
Well, I
answers-
sent you quotes, so we didn't really get we didn't get a like a estimate quote from the project manager. It was more of an email exchange, and I added it to the Excel. And I'm just wondering if I sent you the Excel summary or if I just sent you the quotes here.
I have in your submission, we have your input form and the PDF of all the quotes.
And is there an Excel tally?
Let's see, but you can send it after. It's not going to necessarily.
Yeah, so it's a separate line item on my Excel, on my budget of $4,075, and it's
all right. So
the trails work.
So if I continue with my train of thought, if you're successful tomorrow, when do you have to have the work done by, like to fulfill the grant obligations?
Right. So with the grant, I think it's a TBD depending on the contracting. With what we've anticipated is if we were to receive the full grant, that we could finish by the end of by the end of 2023. The grant, it just depends on the timeline, what they get, what's set up for that. So I think I'm not exactly sure, but I think if in a perfect world, we'd be able to finish by the end of 2023. But honestly, I don't know that everything's going to go as smoothly as I would like it to go. So I would anticipate some flow into 2024, but ideally no longer than mid 2024, or I'm going to be very nervous.
So I guess I'll just make a comment, if this does move forward, this is a sizable enough project that it should dictate having an owner's project manager that manages municipal projects. It's not required, full disclosure, right? It's not required under state law, but obviously given the pace you may have to work at to fulfill the grant, right? There's going to be when we look at what we have for capital this year and forthcoming, a lot of DPW type focused projects, roads, sidewalks, water mains, etc. And we have seen the benefits of owners, project managers on other projects in this town that have turned back significant money. So when you go back and look at your Excel, I would actually look and see like, are they someone that regularly manages owners, like true municipal projects?
No, not the project manager we have is a trails building project manager. So we have not budgeted for a project manager of a municipal project at all.
So
And are you suggesting that the entire project be managed by such, or just the?
I think it's a discussion you need to have with the select board.
Yeah,
But
'cause
remember,
Talked to Mark a little bit about it, Mark Purple, and he had mentioned, that's when he said we would need a project manager to ensure that, you know, that there is a separation between the town, and the project. But I'm not sure. So where should we be getting this guidance? Is that going to be the select board, or is it going to be Mark Purple?
I would think it's a combination. I think that should be, depending on where we land here as capital, one of our objectives in our current charge, but also in our new bylaw that will become effective sometime this summer, is oversight of capital projects. So when something is funded, we don't want to just kind of wipe our hands, sort of, and walk away, because once you start something, you need to finish it, right? So we just want to make sure that what is appropriate and funded, regardless of the source, has the right oversight. That might be professional oversight, it may be department head oversight, like that's just the discussion that will have to occur. So I think that would be part of a future select board discussion, because it may create additional funding needs for you that you haven't thought about.
Well, okay. So, honestly, with the Peninsula Trail itself, other than the trail building vendor and, working under recreation department, we weren't assuming that we would have additional project management funding requirements. And so I can understand where there would be funding requirements for the crosswalks and intersection, but are you suggesting that we also need to see, aside from the building manager, the trail building vendor, that we would need another project manager to oversee that part of it? Or you just, I just need to understand.
Basically, it's not a requirement from this one capital planning member. It's a suggestion at this point, given the size of your project and the lack of ownership right now from a department head perspective. Like I get you sort of fall into recreation, right? And you sort of have this DPW angle. But like when we build buildings in this town, for example, right, there's a department head that has oversight over that building, or multiple, depending on what the building is. But then we're legally required, because it's usually a 7-figure or more job, to actually go out and hire a professional project manager that represents the town and does what I'll call the tough job of making sure that what we're paying for is what we get, and that we're not being stiffed, right? In all of that stuff, right? In here, because of, I'll call it, the uniqueness of your project, I don't know that there's clear ownership. That's not your fault. That's no one's fault. I'm just identifying, which I think is our job as capital, something that should be discussed further. And that's the select board's decision if they're the ones allocating funds as part of ARPA, right?
Okay, so
it's become a moot point if you get the grant, but you still want to make sure you're maximizing that for all of us as taxpayers.
of course. So it sounds like, honestly, I would, right, I think I get it. So would the capital planning be comfortable if, in addition to the project manager that we have for the trail building aspect of it, that Tim Davis as recreation department head, would you be, if he's open to, kind of being a part of this project and having some accountability and ownership as you're describing it, is that something that would satisfy the need? Or I guess one of my concerns is a project manager funding for that being a holdup for the entire project. And I'm not sure where we'd get funds for that, or we'd have to reallocate funds that we had, set aside for the project components. I guess that's what I'm concerned about, at this.
I'd say it usually, history tells me it more than pays for itself in this, but I would think that we could, help support a discussion. My concern is you have multiple representatives on the party side that's going to be receiving the money if this project were to move forward. You have no one on the town side that has ultimate responsibility at this point. That's what we need to help you identify. We're not going to solve it tonight. We can help you facilitate those conversations. I don't think that's something you should feel like you have to do on your own. I'm just flagging it because we flagged it for many other projects, and where we do this, we tend to do projects well. Where we don't do this, we read about them.
Okay, so in the interest of time then, so today's the 27th, so I'm going to work with you, Jason, or do I have to meet the committee in July to determine? I want to keep things rolling quickly, as efficiently as possible, and doing the right thing in the right timeline, not trying to rush through anything, but I understand that, this is going to be a little bit of a bottleneck. So what is the next step and who do I speak to and when?
I don't think it's a bottleneck. It'd be something that if you get the funding approved, that should be discussed in terms of contracting and execution. So depending on where we land tonight on where this should sit in the capital plan, I'm happy to talk to you and then facilitate a discussion with Mark when he's back. And then we can tee it up appropriately for the select board for their consideration at their next meeting.
And so then this is probably something that would have to go to bid and go through that process as well.
It's not a biddable item. It's it's an RFQ. And because of the size of it, you likely don't even need to do that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Lisa has her hand up.
It has nothing to do with what Jason was just talking about. Just a quick question, Kat, just so I understand. The installation of the 2 handicapped parking spaces, where will that be in relation to the crosswalk, or, is it within that area, or is it closer to Stony Brook? I'm just trying to picture where the 0.4 miles of ADA accessible trails would be.
Yes. So as I was describing to Jeffrey, at the end of the T-bone intersection where the trail starts, there's a gate.
Yep.
Their access gate. So we have to move that gate back over the first slope because that slope can't be worked with. And it's going to be at that point, there's going to be 2 spots installed up above. And that will also allow for the remaining spots. There'll be a little bit more parking, general parking on that end. And then to clarify, so that's the one crosswalk. And then on the other side, the crosswalk would only be installed if Sanofi allows, we've made the request of them to do the parking, share their parking spots. So and they're scheduled to get back to us this week on that topic.
Okay, and just one other follow-up to that. So it will be like going straight through the light, the gate there will be moved. Now that's DCR land. Does DCR need to give you special sign-offs in order to put down additional impervious surface?
They have given us permission. We've explained to them what we need to do. So yes, there'll be sign off. They'll have to be involved in the project, obviously, all along. But they know what we've asked to do and the quote that we received, and we got their permission to do that.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Tony.
So let me try to just summarize what I think this discussion was, and partly because I'm trying to take minutes. So, and I'm going to make, I don't know, statements, and we'll just see if we can all agree yes or no. So this entire project, including all possible aspects, and we'll ignore a potential addition of a project manager, is $360,000. Is that correct?
Yes, with the clarification.
So I'm just looking for a yes or no. So
Well, that's a yes, but it's an if. If that's the low end of the
that's
using the low end option for the crosswalk.
Okay. Is that what you're asking for tonight? I don't recall. 300. Is that what's in the budget?
360 is in the budget.
Okay.
I'm not really
$360,000.
Yep.
And the ARPA committee, I think, recommended, yes, fund this for $360,000, correct?
No, that was not the ARPA number.
The ARPA number was?
194,547.
Okay. And then the Mass Trails grant would offset that 190, that $200,000
If the full amount were funded, yes.
if the full amount were funded. Okay, thank you.
So can we take Tony's series of questions? And I do, Mr. Reed, I do see your hand up and I will get to you in a second once the committee's done discussing before we take any votes. If we split this, Kat, into two projects, which is where I'm at personally,
Mhm.
is I think we have the Peninsula Trail project that lines up perfectly with your ARPA submission and your Mass Trails submission. And I
Yep.
think you feel, I'm going to put words out there, you yell at me if these, pretty good about those numbers, subject to what we all deal with on our daily life. You then have part two, which is the crosswalks, which you have basically two quotes that are 4 times apart from each other, and would probably be 10 times apart if we got 2 more quotes, is my guess. So that project seems like it could go either way, not based on need, but just totally based on cost. And I imagine there's a breaking point in your mind, at least, of when that project just becomes not the best use of any funds, based on just someone basically ripping us off at some point in time here.
Well, yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, well, right now it's very expensive and it wasn't anticipated to be that expensive, sure.
So
we're
do you have
sensitive.
any objection to the committee separating these two projects for purposes of the capital plan?
No objection.
Okay. All right. What is the number that you would propose if we were to put the Peninsula Trail into the capital plan? Is that the 197?
Well, so I have to ask a clarifying question because I don't know how it works. So the 195, right, rounding up, is the cash outlay. Now we have the additional CPA funds and DPW in kind. I'm assuming you do, or you do not want to add that to the number.
That we should have all in, regardless of funding source,
Thank you.
what it costs to do the trail scope that you have been pitching to every each of those committees.
262, 745.
Okay, of which the 40, and now I'm going to read your submission again. The 47011 is already approved by town meeting,
Correct.
and the DPW in kind is in an operational budget. And Ms. Galligan has offered those services, or that's a future discussion that still needs to be had?
She's offered this as an in-kind match for the Mass Trails grant. So that's the answer I have. She's offered this as in-kind support from DPW, and she provided a letter of support that we used in our Mass Trails grant, and we documented this number in our Mass Trails grant. That's the information I have.
Okay. All right. But that, Mr. Reed's question or comment.
Good evening. So, Jason, going back to some clarification you provided during the previous presentation on the signs and the mention of the ARPA funds being able to be utilized for revenue replacement. Does this particular project in any way meet that definition or guideline or criteria? I think the answer is no, but I just want to maybe have that be clarified.
I'm going to see if one of the ARPA committee members wants to speak to that. Otherwise, I think we would have the town's consultant answer that definitively. But Tony, do you want to go on that first?
So I will try, and Joe, if you disagree with what I say, please speak up. So Joe and I were on the ARPA committee. We spent a lot of time coming up to speed on what kind of projects would be approvable under or qualified for ARPA funding. Everything that the ARPA committee recommended in the end qualified for ARPA funding. And this was one of the projects on the list that we suggested should be ARPA funded. So the answer is yes, this qualifies for ARPA funding, as did every other project that was on the ARPA committee list.
Okay. So with respect to it's going to go back to the similar request I made for the signs, and just any committee member willing to speak to the specifics of the guidelines or other criteria that are met. Joe, I appreciate what you provided for the previous explanation for the signs. I appreciate anyone willing to speak to that. I think this one's actually more clear cut. I'm interested in hearing from the committee members how that, which criteria or guidelines are met. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think that's our job, in all due respect. I think the town hired a consultant, realizing the complexity of the rules here. And I appreciate the comment. And I think what we can do is just ask the question. And between Lisa and Brian, I think this is an easy reach out to Jennifer, who I believe is the hired consultant on this, that we actually have allocated ARPA funds to fund and make sure we do this the right way, because I think we just want to make sure we do it the right way. And I would not single out this project, or I wouldn't single out historical. I would just ask, of the submission, basically provide a copy of the presentation. And I'm sure this has already been done, but let's just get it in writing. Are there any concerns with the items that are being raised? And I think that would hopefully more than satisfy the request here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. The only thing I feel confident answering is you can't fund pension liabilities with ARPA funds. That's one thing I definitely think has been the clearest part of ARPA funding.
Understood. Thank you.
All right. So is there any more deliberation amongst the committee? Joe, you have your hands down now. Hand up or down?
It was up. I was just going to address John and say, just sort of add to that. And you're right about the pension funds, existing debt obligations. But it ended up that the categories were so broad with industries such as tourism, travel, and hospitality that we could spend the money on almost anything that the town really needed.
And
Go ahead.
sorry, so just to maybe point out, I think that it's a very exciting project, and one that I'd be supportive, particularly hearing the mention of the ADA compliant portion of that. I think that's a great benefit, and particularly for coming out of the pandemic environment and the many individuals seeking the outdoors and what that offers. I think it's a wonderful project. So thank you.
All right. Thank you for that. Is there anyone that wants to make motions on this as one? Everyone wants to split it? Okay. Kat, how would you feel if we don't take a motion on the crosswalks tonight, given the difference in bids and knowing that we'll know the outcome of the grant soon, right? And maybe be able to further refine some of this moving forward. I mean, we can do it quickly. We won't leave it hanging.
Can I ask you a clarifying question? Because this is our first time trails through this capital planning process. And I don't understand, you're going to be voting for what? To put it on a list so that the town knows coming down, right? It's a project list, and that's essentially what you're voting on. And we would hold off on voting for the crosswalks because we don't know the number, the actual number. It's in flux. Is that right?
Well, I think there's a lot of things in the crosswalk, at least for me, is you've got two numbers that are $400,000 apart.
Yeah.
You've asked them to bid it essentially in isolation when it's probably a project that can be combined with 10 other things that Karen is doing to get you the economies of scale. So I'm not willing to put a number on a piece of paper that's like, even if we average them, or even if we took your floor, well, I know your floor is probably wrong, right? Because you have another bid that's $400,000 higher. I just think let's see where you land. Again, my personal view, let's see where you land on Peninsula. Let's see what the potential funding source, because that's important too, of where the funds would be coming from for the crosswalks. And depending upon where the funding may be coming from, let's figure out how it lines up. Part of our job is how this all lines up as a town, because everyone has operated in a silo and they just look at what they want and
Yep.
they go and do their own thing. They do everything the right way more often than not. But
Yep.
then there's this interest and that interest that could have benefited just as more. And you've got a lot of that going for you here with the accessibility in particular. I just think it's too soon to put it on the capital plan. I think it's worth another discussion in, learning our fate on some of the other stuff and just letting that settle and focusing on that Peninsula Trail. That's where I'm at. Someone else is more than happy to make a motion to the contrary, but I am not ready on that one.
And that's fair. I need to understand how to get the crosswalk quotes into a better shape and to, I guess, what's the next step with that whole process? I don't want it just to kind of like fall by the wayside and not get prioritized just because it's an unknown, like wanting to keep the ball moving forward. So is this something I'll talk to you with offline or?
Well, I think it also, it relates into another item we're going to talk about under item 8 of our agenda, which I need to get to, which is DPW capital in road and sidewalk projects. To me, it falls in there as well.
And Karen's been a part of these conversations, so she knows these quotes are, and she was the one that put me in touch with VHB. So that works out great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So does anyone want to move anything on the sidewalks tonight? Okay. So we'll keep that as an agenda item, Kat, for future meetings. And we will also, what I will probably ask you to do is to separately submit that one. You can really copy and paste, you already did. We'll get it in as 2 separate ones moving forward here, because I think we've got momentum on one part of this based on my reading of the room here.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Now, on the Peninsula Trail, is everyone ready to vote on that one tonight? All right, so then let's move that we, Capital Planning Committee, support the addition of the Peninsula Trail project through a funding source of grant funding and or ARPA funding. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All right, let's do a roll call vote. Brascio?
Aye.
Hark?
Aye.
Palmer?
Aye.
Joner?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye.
And Malinowski's aye. All right, so you're unanimous on that one. Any parting words, Kat?
No, thank you for your time. I appreciate your efforts and your future time and efforts helping us sort this through.
We'll keep in touch, and please let us know how it goes tomorrow.
Oh, I will. Thank you.
All right,
Thank
good
you.
luck. All right. I am going to move on to item 6, discussion of prioritization criteria for capital items. This is really an ask if someone is interested in it, is we're gonna have some tough decisions. We've talked about this many times in the coming years. We're not gonna have candidly the benefit of this ARPA discussion we just had. And we're gonna have to make some tough decisions on probably very valid capital expenses. We know we have some sort of building projects in our future for a variety of different reasons, whether it be renovations, remodels, or new construction. And I think we're gonna run into a situation of, using our criteria in the capital plan, which outlines what is a capital item and how to prioritize, like safety is an example. My real question is whether someone wants to investigate what other towns do around this and see whether we should be prioritizing in our capital plan accordingly based on our policy. I think it's a step we agreed to kind of pass on last year or 2 years ago, I guess, when we made the initial policy. But I think we've been lucky to not have to make some tough decisions to date, but I don't think future iterations of this committee are going to be as lucky and are going to have to make some tough calls even before it gets to the select board and advisory for town meeting sort of vetting. So it's really just a request for someone to do some research and report back with what they find. I can go back and pull the communities that we thought were really good case studies when we came up with the policy. That would be helpful, but I need some help if we want to do that. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I'm still torn from the original discussion that we had those years ago about trying to put together a prioritization table and the way we were going to go about it. I would hope and like to think that when we go through our deliberations that we take those into account and surface those with each other and come to a good agreement as to, you know, the things that we prioritize. I'm not sure a table is going to do a better job than most of the people on the committee that I've been here serving with. But that's just an opinion.
Other thoughts? All
So
right.
your question here, Jason, is just to poll a few other towns and see if they have a priority list? That's all you're looking?
Just kind of look at some capital plans and see if there's any sort of prioritization around it and how they're doing it and what their mechanism is for doing it. I mean,
Do you have contacts at a few towns in mind?
I'll send you, I guess the policy predated you, right? Being on the committee.
Yes.
I'll send you the communities that we spent some time looking at to meld our own policy. Those would probably be where I would start.
All right.
They're all public documents. You don't have to even look. You won't have to call a single person as my guess. You'll be able to find it right in their capital plans.
If the committee wants, I'm willing to review some of that information.
I think it'd be helpful to look at least 3 and come back with, hey, they're not really doing it. They're not following it. They're doing what Joe was saying, just as a sanity check. Because what I'm trying to avoid is a situation where someone thinks it's on the capital plan so that it's definitely moving forward in this fiscal year. And, you know, they get surprised when we have to make a tough decision because we only have, let's call it $1 million to spend in capital, and we've got 1.2 million sitting there, and we're being asked to make some cuts because others are making cuts. Like, I just can foresee a situation like that at some point in time. That's what used to happen before we existed, was there was some pretty arbitrary cuts. The Northborough Road culvert is the one that continues to, you know, remind me of that, you know, based on the prior discussions. So
If you send me the info, I'll review it.
okay, thank you, Tony. Next item is the space needs study, including discussion of requesting a community center exploration committee charge. So as everyone remembers, in our last discussion, we talked about the master plan. The concept of a community center appeared multiple places throughout there. We obviously heard the deliberations in reaction to our initial plan that DRA had come up with back in January. To me, I put this on the agenda because I think it's time for a broader group, you know, that's representative of capital, broader public, recreation, library, council on aging, and I'm sure there's a few others, to figure out what a true community center plan could look like, who it encompasses, what buildings or options are available, and have that ready for when the NERI Building Committee is also ready with their recommendations, because we're not going to be able to go build new of all of these things. I think we all know that, no matter how deep our pockets even if you had new growth that we've never seen before, you're not gonna be able to afford all that. So, how do you meld that compromise, is gonna be important. But it's also important to our state funding that we stand potential to get through the MSBA process. Remember, they in particular have asked the questions around what is the community level support for closing Woodward and repurposing it. Until we have a true plan around that and who would be using it, I don't know that we are answering their question to the level of detail that that public vetting process will go through. So really the request of this committee is, if you're okay with it, us working with the select board to get that committee kind of stood up and work on a charge. They could obviously choose not to initiate the charge, but I think it's consistent with the master plan goal. It's consistent with all we're doing. And I don't know that this as powerful as this 6-person group is and what we can get done. I don't know that we are all the true right representatives. And I think we need a broader perspective and have that kind of competing sort of interest to try to meld that consensus. So I throw it out there for discussion and see where you want to go with it.
Jason, I think it's a great idea. And, when we were looking at the golf course and potential uses of that, we had a pretty large committee that actually came together and reached a consensus. So I agree. It's really outside the scope of, I think, what Capital wants to take on. And I think it's great to have some of these vested parties also have a seat at the table and discuss, what it is that they're looking for. So I would be extremely supportive of, making a recommendation for that.
Any thoughts to the contrary on that? Do you want to see the charge, or do you want me to work with Mr. Purple when he is back on putting something in front of the select board, and then that obviously be a future agenda item for them? So
Jason, I see no problem with letting you work up a charge for it.
Okay.
I think you're right on point. That's not something we should be taking on.
Okay. All right. Moving on to item 8. I'm going to commingle these together. So as you know, there's been a lot of discussion in the town on DPW capital in general, and obviously our role specific to the road and sidewalk maintenance RFQ that will have to go out. Actually, it's RFP, not RFQ. They'll have to go out with the money that is available for spending outside of previously approved projects. But I wanted to kind of take a step back. So Karen initiated a conversation with Bill Boland, who's the Public Works Planning Board Chair, and myself about a few of these items, particularly A and B on the agenda. There was a presentation on a request from the town of Hopkinton on connecting into some of our water. Go back to the email that Karen sent to us. It was in the public packet. And I'd also, if you didn't watch the select board meeting, encourage everyone to watch that discussion. Karen has requested that our 2 committees meet together jointly to continue to help explore and vet that for an ultimate presentation back to the select board, who will decide, what to do with that. In short, the town of Hopkinton is looking to connect in to existing connections of the town of Southborough already has to MWRA in exchange for funding capital improvements that the town of Southborough in some instances would have had to pay at a future date, and in some instances doing capital improvements of their own that Southborough would not have needed absent these sort of connections. So we have tentatively scheduled July 18th, which is a Monday night, for that, but I obviously have not vetted that date with the committee up until now. So it would have to be at least 4 people in the room, unless the legislature continues with their action to make remote meetings permanent, or at least permanent for another year or 2. So if everyone can just kind of look at schedules and send me an email with A, whether you're available on the 18th, and B, whether you would be remote or could be in person in Southborough, that would be helpful, just so I can make sure. And we would just be getting a briefing. There would be no decisions that night. It would be to make sure everyone's working with the same information and to start the collaboration process around that. The same thing is true of the Corderville Road project. This is on our capital plan for next year. Karen is looking to get input from us and Public Works Planning Board of what process we would like to see her undertake to get and educate the public about this project. We, at least the original founding members of Capital, I'll call it, have heard about this project multiple times at this point, and it's been, pushed to FY23. But this will involve trees. It'll involve, I don't think it involves easements, but Karen can confirm that. But it's just a large project that encompasses a good deal of road in town. So the goal would be that we can hear during that discussion where she's at, offer opinions on where we would go in the fall on that. And then the next part is really she's not ready on road and sidewalks. She had been waiting for kind of confirmation of where Northborough Road was headed in terms of the culvert, which she got from the select board. And then she also is waiting on the triangle, the St. Mark's Triangle project in terms of what aspects of that bid are continuing versus on pause. So she will be bringing something forward. I've encouraged her that there are many other roads in town that need attention and that we have funding, and that, we would like to have a discussion sooner rather than later about her prioritization around some of those. And that we need to withhold kind of some of our commitments to move forward. And we're obviously moving through a paving season very quickly here. So Lisa, I see your hand up.
Thanks, Jason. Just a quick question, and I don't know whether this falls under C or not, or if this is a future meeting discussion regarding the pavement management system. Is that future, or is this RFP incorporating that?
No, two different things.
Okay, thank you.
Just to give an update is Mark had received some data before he left and promised something to go out on that based on the discussion of the select board once he was back from vacation. So we will have some vetting to do there. That's outside of this. This is really a discussion of, does Karen have enough roads? I'm just going to use Parkerville near the schools as an example that I think everyone can agree that needs some attention, right? Does Karen have roads that we don't need a pavement management system out there to just get some sort of work done? We know the Finn parking lot is part of this too. Let's not forget, we approved that as part of their revolving fund. So just an update on where she's at, what she's waiting for, and having that discussion of, we clearly need this longer term solution that everyone's behind, but is there stuff we should be doing with other funds that is just a clear sort of no brainer? That's what I think needs to be discussed in an open public meeting. Any questions on that? All right, with that, I'll go to public comment. Seeing none. Meeting schedule, so everyone send me in person versus remote on 7/18. And then I will be looking for certainly an August meeting date, but let's see if we get the extension from the legislature first and see if we can have this meeting on 7/18 and go from there. Is there any other business anyone wanted to raise? All right. I will make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Braccio.
Aye.
Hark.
Aye.
Palmer. And Malinowski's aye.